be here. I'd like to tell you a story. It's a true story, but it's about make-believe. It's about fiction. One day, a couple of years ago, a couple of guys came down to fish in the Anchor River behind the house where I live at Anchor Point, and I knew one of them well, and the other one was just an acquaintance. His name was Jeremy. He was a young man, and he told me that our mutual friend had lent him my first book of short stories. And of course, I was pleased. Every writer wants to know about new readers. But when he said, I really like that first story about you and your father going fishing and the factories and all this stuff, I had to stop him and say, wait a minute, Jeremy, none of that happened. That was all made up. It's fiction, that the whole book is. And he was horrified. He said, fiction? Fiction? What good is fiction? I didn't have a ready answer for him at the moment, but I realized that, well, I ended up thinking about it for a while. What Jeremy wanted from that story that he read, what he thought he was getting was information, facts. He thought he was getting history, I guess, of my life, and he was a bit appalled. It's really no wonder that a young person in his 30s, would be most interested in information. After all, this is the information age. We certainly got a lot of information today. But I've kind of lost my faith in information. In the 45 years that I've been an adult, I've seen it proliferate, expand exponentially, and yet become less and less reliable. From Watergate to the fictional WMDs that didn't exist in Iraq, to the Vatican's misinformation and disinformation, to just about anything a politician says during an election year, and it's always an election year now. Information has lost its reliability. I'm putting my faith in fiction, in good fiction, in literature. Literature deals in universal truths that never have to be revised. I'm specifying good fiction because just as all information is not equally good or reliable, neither is all fiction. The mass-marketed, best-selling, blockbuster thrillers and detective series and cheesy romance novels are not necessarily what I'm talking about. Here's a fact, information. One of the big fast food companies, who I won't name because I'm going to poke a little fun at him here, sells 54 million hamburgers a day. Every day, 365 days a year. That doesn't make it fine dining. For some of us snobs, it doesn't even make it food. And the same is true. The same is true of fiction. The fast food fictions that people read on those flying penal colonies that the airlines use to move us from city to city serve one purpose, and it's a good purpose under those conditions, and that is to distract them from the discomforts of day-to-day life. But unfortunately, those junk food fictions also distract readers from the awareness of their own humanity, because the characters in the fast food fictions, it's been said by many critics, and it's become a bit of a cliche, are as thin and flat as the paper they're written on. You never really get to know them in the way you know a character from literature. All you need to know about, all you'll ever know about the hero of the adventure thriller is that he's a better shot than any of the bad guys who shoot at him. All you need to know about the detective in the 15th volume of the detective series is that he or she is going to solve the crime just as he or she did in the 14 previous murders. All you need to know about the cheesy heroine of the cheesy romance is that the cheesy, tall, dark, and handsome lord of the manor is going to sweep her away and marry her at the end of it. Really good literature doesn't work like that. In fact, it encourages exactly the opposite. It encourages a deep human connection with the characters. It encourages empathy for fictitious characters whom we know never existed, doing things we know never happened. If we can bring ourselves to care the way we do in good literature about the characters that we know never existed, we can only be that much more empathetic and compassionate people toward real human beings in the real world. That is what I would say to Jeremy or anyone who asks me, what good is fiction? Fiction is calisthenics for empathy. It builds up the muscle in your heart, maybe, for the romantics among us, or in your soul for the spiritual. The muscle that enables you to care about someone other than yourself. That's what I would say. Coincidental to all this, a few weeks ago I was reading a New Yorker, and the word empathy leapt off the page at me. And it was an article. It had nothing to do with literature. It was about scientists studying the remains of the Neanderthals, the creatures, almost human creatures who lived 15,000 years ago or so. I'm not good with facts. You know, the big, scary-looking guys, big head, like gorilla, a lot of hair. Look like a hockey player, but no mullet. You know. They said that a couple of the skeletons showed bones that had healed from injuries prior to the death of the creature. That these particular specimens were two male Neanderthals who had lived into their 50s in spite of, one had a broken knee earlier in his life, and one had a serious head injury earlier in his life, which is amazing, because if you ever imagine hunting, even today, with four-wheelers and rifles with a broken knee or a concussion, you could imagine how hard it must have been with a club and a spear. But somehow he got by. And the conclusion that the scientists came to, I was going to read exactly, said, this was an interesting thing, that both individuals survived into their 50s, which indicates that Neanderthals had the capacity for collective action, or, if you prefer, empathy. That's the word that caught my eye. They must at least sometimes have cared for their wounded. That's pretty sophisticated. Now, as a fiction writer, of course, that's still just information. That's what we call telling instead of showing. You know how your writing instructions always haunt you to show, not tell? So here's the way I see it. This Neanderthal fella comes home and his leg is smashed by a rhinoceros and his head's cracked, and he comes into the cave and he falls on the floor groaning in pain, and and his friends, his cave friends, get him together and they put him over on his little, to get him a comfortable rock to lie up against and fluff up the rocks for him or something. And his wife brings him a bowl of prehistoric chicken soup, and it's very low sodium. They hadn't invented the salt shaker. Well, the salt shaker wouldn't be invented for tens of thousands of years. And he's there and he's fairly comfortable, and his friends say, we'll hunt and we'll share the food with you until you're better. You have to lie around until your bones heal. Very human. That's empathy. That's compassion. And they say to him, so is there anything else we can do for you? Empathy. And he looks up at them over that bowl of chicken broth and he says, somebody tell me a story. Thank you very much.